Oh, hello. So today we are going to do a quick February wrap up. I say quick because a lot of the books I read in February, I think I read 13 or 14 books. A lot of them are in or will be in vlog videos where I'm going to talk about them at length, or I have talked about them at length. So I'm not going to dwell on those in this video. Plus I'm still getting my day going and I don't have a ton of time, but I did just want to check in on the books that did not make it into a vlog because I had some really good books that I wanted to talk about that didn't go into a vlog. So the ones you've already seen me talk about are An Abolitionist Handbook, Disobedience and Democracy, and Joyful Militancy. Of all of those, this is my favorite book of the year so far. Disobedience and Democracy, 9 Fallacies on Law and Order. Highly, highly, highly recommend this. This is incredibly relevant right now. Very persuasively written, short, lots to think about and chew on. So very much recommend this one. But you've already seen these. Oh, and I'll put here between that vlog and the live stream I did for January wrap up, I'll put here how much we've raised for the Minnesota Immigrant Law Center. We'll see what fundraiser I pick next. But these are 5 books that I either read or DNF'd that are going to be in the next reading vlog from this stack. Can you figure out the theme? I'm still in the middle of reading books for it, so these are not all the books. An intriguing mix here, no? Okay, so those are the books that we're not going to talk about, but that I did read in February. February was a very good reading month. I think I had nearly a 4-star average if you took out my DNF, so that was exciting. 2 books that I have as ebooks and not as physical books. One was Space Vampire by Ruby Dixon. I have realized because I've been so focused on my TBR, I've been letting a lot of my Kindle Unlimited girlies kind of fall to the back of the line. I'm making very good progress on reading down my TBR. We're officially under 200 books and my goal is to get to 100. So I'm slowly allowing myself to read some things that are not included in that project. So I did read Space Vampire and it was okay. I think I gave it 2 or 2.5 stars. It is in the Rizdaverse. It is I think a novella is even generous for the length of what this actually is. It's basically a short story. Cute, forced proximity, smutty. It was Ruby Dixon, it was fine. If you're not a Ruby Dixon person, I wouldn't particularly recommend this, but if you like Ruby Dixon, it's a nice little amuse-bouche of Ruby, little espresso shot of Ruby. So gave it 2 or 2.5 stars. Not great, but I enjoy her, so it was good for that reason. The other thing that happened in ebook was I read The Trouble with Peace, and then also I finished The Wisdom of Crowds, which means that I officially have finished all of The First Law World from Joe Abercrombie. And for those 2 books, I'm sure me and Leanna are going to be doing a live stream on her channel to talk about this trilogy in particular, because we did one at the end of the original trilogy. We did one for the standalones. So I'm assuming we're going to do that. So I guess I'll save my deep thoughts about this for that live stream. So keep your eye out for that. But overall, my feeling is, I think the writing is great. He continues to just get better and better on the writing, and it was already good. So the writing is great. The themes are great, very relevant for our current moment, because it's a lot about class struggle basically, and what those in power do in the face of an emerging class struggle. It's grimdark, so grimdark things happen for sure. My favorite character definitely is Savine. I loved her journey. And I would say this trilogy, you should certainly read at least the original trilogy before reading, but really just read all of them, because there's so many little Easter eggs, and particularly with Savine and some of her background and some of the choices she's making. It's like Chekhov's fill in the blank for spoiler. So you're just waiting for her to find out some of this stuff, and then she does, and then there's all these implications in the next books. So yeah, I really liked this trilogy. I just, from a character perspective and a writing and theme perspective, the plot, I just didn't connect with fully. It's my least favorite of the plots, this trilogy. It's very, Leanna mentioned this to me when I was reading The Trouble of Peace, but the original trilogy is sort of like a grimdark take on Lord of the Rings. And this is like a not even grimdark, because these are just already pretty dark, but it's very Shakespearean. It's giving very Shakespeare's history plays. But for me, the reason I really liked the original trilogy's take on the Lord of the Rings source material is that it felt like it did something a little different with it. Whereas this, I could anticipate a lot of the things that were going to happen or either anticipate what was going to happen or that something was going to happen, because I know his vibe now, plus, you know, being familiar with sort of the like Game of Thrones, if you will, of the actual history of England and its kings and queens in the pre-modern era, you know, the Plantagenet drama of it all. Yeah, I mean, like the Plantagenet, I guess, into the Tudors, but, you know, it just, you kind of know some of the things that are likely to happen. So I think I just wasn't as compelled by the plot, but I really liked all the character work, the themes, the writing. So I gave Trouble with Peace 4 stars. I also give this 4 stars, and I would give that trilogy as a whole 4 stars, whereas I would give the original trilogy as a whole 5 stars, if that makes sense. So overall, First Law writ large, one of my all-time favorite fantasy series, definitely. Perhaps top 3? Because I think, I mean, yeah, maybe. I think I would probably go Hob, Realm of the Elderlings, Lord of the Rings, this. So for what that's worth, I love this. I thought that this overall world is great, and I highly recommend, if you have a taste for blood, if you have an appetite for darkness, this is a great series. And if you can, honestly, in some ways, this is less dark than Hob. It's more overt in its darkness, but it's, I think, underlying, I think in some ways it has more hope for humanity underlying it to some degree. So yeah, anyway, I highly recommend that series. Okay, what do we got left? We got a fantasy, 2 nonfiction, and a mystery. So maybe we'll go mystery, nonfiction, fantasy, nonfiction. Okay, mystery. I am dipping my toes back into Detective Kendechi, finally, by Seishi Yokimizo. This is technically not the next book I needed to read, but because I knew this was a novella, I decided to just go ahead and read this, because I just wanted to get kind of back into the world with like a smaller story. And this has 2 novellas in it. One is the one that I didn't honestly like very much, to be totally honest, was about the Hunnenden family. I forget what it was called. It's like letters. It is mixed media, so I appreciate that. It's got somebody with 2 pupils, which was kind of nuts. It's called Why Did the Well Wheel Creak? That one I didn't love. I'd give that like a 3 star, but I really enjoyed The Murder at the Black Cat Cafe. It does include an allusion to animal harm, so just know that. But other than that, it's a murder. It's like, it was giving me intensely Christie vibes. Like, swap out the setting, swap out the characters, and this is a Poirot novella. It was very delicious, classic golden age of detective fiction deliciousness. I really enjoyed the first novella. It is a woman is found buried behind a cafe that like hosts sex work. I would be interested. I probably could look this up. Like, it's making some assumptions about how sex work is being conducted immediately after World War II in Japan that didn't totally map to my understanding of how different sex work scenarios work, if that sentence made sense. So it was like, it's a bar, but it's also kind of a brothel. Like, I couldn't totally tell that. But anyway, it's a place where there are like sex worker employees at this bar. and the owners clear out suddenly, and then this body is found, and the woman in the grave that is found has no face. So like, you know, it's got some meta commentary on how those kinds of tropes normally go, and then it's kind of playing with those tropes in a way that I just thought was really fun. So this has got me hyped to get back in to my Detective Kindaichi era. I have decided officially, though, based on reading this, I'm not going to binge this per se. I'm more just going to make it a priority to be reading on it for the next few months, because I don't know that this would benefit. I don't think my enjoyment would benefit from doing a true binge the way that I sometimes binge other series. So, but yeah, this was great. 4 stars. Very happy to be back in that world. Leon Trotsky, an illustrated introduction by Tariq Ali. This is from 1980, and I am just like continuing to evolve my education on the history of leftist politics in the last couple hundred years. And you know, you often hear people accused of being a Trotskyite. I have ideas about what that means, but I was just wanting to like reinforce and deepen my understanding of that. I think this was a good little overview. I'd give it like 3 stars. It does have like cartoons and like mixed media, so it was, you know, an engaging way to get some info. But yeah, I definitely associated him with like international worker solidarity, and this kind of like explains some of that a little bit more. So 3 stars, did what I was hoping it would do. Okay, and then the last 2 are 2 4.5 stars. Like I said, very good reading month. I had a 5 star, I had 3 4.5s, and then like a couple of 4s that were verging on 4.5. We were reading some good stuff this month. Okay, The Last Fallen Star by Gracie Kim. This is the first book in a trilogy in the Uncle Rick Presents middle grade fantasy line. This one in particular is dealing with Korean mythology, so that that's part of the joy of reading these books, is like learning more about mythologies that, you know, as an American, I don't have as much exposure to. And so that was interesting. But I think what this did really well was the character dynamics, and I think it picked a really good plot. I'm excited to see where this plot goes over the course of the 3 books. The setup is that our main character is basically the equivalent of like a squib in a magical family. She was adopted. She does not have magic, but her sister, who's like basically her same age, does have magic. And on her 13th birthday, there's like a ceremony for her to like get her magic officially from her clan. They are in the Gome clan, I believe. That sounds right. They're the healers. And there's like these different goddesses who like bless different clans with their, you know, various gifts and aptitudes. So her sister, who is magical, really wants to share her magic with Riley. I want to say, yeah, Riley is our main character. Hattie is her sister. Hattie wants to share her magic with Riley. They're going to do a ceremony to do that. And when that ceremony is happening, things pop off and the plot kind of progresses from there. This was just really well done middle grade fantasy. It's what I like in middle grade fantasy. It was funny, but I would say less funny than Uncle Rick tends to be. But it, you know, it had a light tone, but it also had some like real pathos. I definitely cried a few times in this book. And I just thought it was a great example of this kind of middle grade fantasy that I really enjoy. So I am excited to finish this trilogy. You know, it's a 4 to 4.5. I aired on the side of 4.5, so we'll see how I'm feeling at the end of the year. It's not like the best book I've ever read, but like I went through a whole stack, you can kind of see some of them down here, of middle grade books and YA fantasy books, looking for the feeling that this gave me. I think I have a specific vibe I'm looking for these days in fantasy aimed at younger readers, and this gave me that vibe. So that was exciting. And then the last one, which was very nearly a 5 star, but I think it kind of lost some of its narrative oomph towards the end, was Alpine Rising, Sherpas, Baltis, and the Triumph of Local Climbers in the Great Ranges. If you are interested in mountaineering, you should read this book. This book is retelling a lot of the like famous first climbs of the highest mountains in the world in the Himalaya and the Karakoram, but through the eyes of the local porters, guides, workers who made those climbs possible, and really explores the cost of these Western imperialist, colonialist climbers coming into these countries, and then like what happens to the people who are left behind after it. And part of what's really neat about this is if you are familiar with these stories, you get like another layer and view of them, and some of the like big names that you hear about, you get another perspective on them for sure. And then you really see, like, this is such an interesting sociological study, or like cultural anthropology kind of thing, because you're seeing the culture around climbing develop at the cost of these kind of like early workers. And then the contrast between the earliest workers and then workers today who are like really reclaiming their mountains in a lot of ways, in terms of who's profiting and like who has the expertise and all of that, in a way that's like rad. It's a really poignant narrative just of like cultural evolution. And there's a very interesting dichotomy or tension between how that's developed in Nepal versus how that's happened in Pakistan. And it kind of talks a lot about the partitioning of India and how that impacted what's happened in Pakistan. And yeah, I don't know. It's a very interesting cultural history through the perspective of mountaineering. Very tragic. I mean, I definitely cried in a few places in this, in terms of like just the pure human misery and suffering some of these workers experienced, and just like the admiration for what they accomplished with like no training and no gear. Literally, we have people climbing Mount Everest with like straw shoes in the early days. It's bananas. So this is just absolutely great. I will say towards the end, it gets into much less narrative and much more just sort of like biographical vignettes of contemporary guides and climbers. And those are interesting, but they're just less impactful because they're just, page-long bios versus like a full story. So towards the end, it kind of drops off a little bit just in terms of like the narrative thrust, but overall, this is so excellent. I really recommend this if you are at all interested in mountaineering, and I honestly think I would recommend, if you're interested in trying mountaineering books, I would say maybe start with No Shortcuts to the Top by Ed Viesturs, because he gives you kind of an overview of some of these like major climbing stories, and then come to this. I mean, you could even start with this maybe, because I think that this perspective on those stories should be foundational to how people hear about like the Herzog climb of Annapurna. I'm very glad I read this before I'm gonna read his book at some point, but I'm very glad I read this first. This also talks about the Germans climbing in the Nazi era, and like some of the, anyway, I just think that this should be early. If you're getting into mountaineering nonfiction, this should be one you read early on to get this perspective, because I think it's a very important one. And if you have been reading mountaineering literature, I highly recommend you go back and read this, because I think this is an important contextualization. So yeah, anyway, great. 4.5 stars, verging on 5. Just at the end, it gets a little shaky on the narrative. Okay, I just realized I am now running late, so I should wrap this up. I hope you guys are doing really well. I got a lot of stuff in the cooker, so you'll be seeing videos as I have time to edit them. February was an unexpectedly crazy month. So, yeah, anyway, love y'all. I hope you are taking care of yourself and your friends and family and your community. Yeah, be well, hold each other close in these times, and yeah, I will just talk to you soon. Bye.